Hi everyone and welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be answering a Patreon's question regarding making this shape here. So this is a model aircraft Spitfire exhaust. There is a part missing from this, and that's the top part, which I haven't done. But the problem that we was having is this sweep along here. I've used the curve workbench for this to create this, and the part workbench to create this cut from along here with this slot object. So I'm going to take you through how this is built and how to use a DXF file. So we can see the file in here, and you can see it's a bit all over the place at different angles and different dimensions, etc. And we can actually pull in some of these dimensions for reference and base some of our geometry off of this. So it's quite an awkward file to work with, so I can see why the Patreon was having problems with actually producing this. A little bit tricky, but we can get through it with a little bit of patience. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and let's have a look how we actually tackle this.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel.
So for this tutorial, we're in FreeCAD. We're actually starting in the draft workbench because we're going to import a 2D file so we can use it in our sweeps. And create a new document, and I'm going to go to File and Import, and I'm going to import the DXF file and open that. Now if we look at this from the top, we can see the geometry that's been imported, and it can be quite confusing. We've got this shape here which is looking at it from the top, and we've got the profiles. We can see that basically this part is pushed onto here, and we've got no idea of the width of this, because if we scroll in we can see that this actually curves around here. So I'm not 100% sure of this wall width of this part. We can determine the wall width here of this part that seems to be pushed on here, but we don't know about this, so we need to make some assumptions with that one. That show how we would go about extracting the geometry for our sweep. So I'm first going to clean this up. So if I zoom in, I can see two curves. So I can see that one there. And what we're looking for is a line, a continuous line that goes across here. And we've got one in here as well. This one. Let's press the space bar on that. There we go. So we've got two continuous lines. We're going to have to extend this with the sketch to come down here. But you see, after we press the space bar, the shape disappears. So this is built up of a number of different shapes. If we roll over here, we can see vertices, lines, edges, B-splines, etc. I'm going to control click each of the lines that I want, or each of the curves. And we're going to use the modifications and upgrade. This upgrades those shapes into a more complex object. So if we hit upgrade, they will link together. So we've linked this one together and this one as wires. So we've joined those together. Now what I can do is control click both of these wires and use another tool, modifications, draft to sketch, and this will create a sketch. If we come down to the bottom, we can just see it there. Then we can double click on it, and we've pulled in that geometry. We're now going to extend these lines out and attach them to some kind of line along here that we can change the distance with, because we need to actually create this profile, attach it to this point, and create this profile and attach it to this point here. So these will be individual sketches. Let's create the lines. Let's make sure our auto constraints are on. So when I click that line, if we hover over that point, we get the coincident constraint, and we come out to here. And we do the same with this one and come out to here. Escape that. And we need some tangency against here, but they're probably B-splines, so we can't make tangency across there. So that's fine. We just keep them in line. I'm going to place another line in here. And this is going to be construction geometry. Click on that. and make that construction geometry, so that won't show up. It doesn't matter if it does, because we can still use this in the sweep. And we're going to make this one and this one at right angles. So I'm going to use the perpendicular constraint across there. So we've got that one in there. We need to set the width for this, which is going to be the diameter of this here. So I'm going to take the external one from this. Let's pull that in. And with this pulled in, I can check the diameter just by coming in and clicking on the diameter and clicking on that arc. What will happen, we get a blue reference diameter. Now we've got this length in here, which is the diameter. Let's come in and set the length of these 2 points. I'm going to use distance. That's 9.01. So that's set that distance between there. We're going to do the same for the top. So we're going to import this geometry here. This is going to be a bit more tricky because we need to figure out the whole length of this. To do that, we need to figure out the radius. And I'm going to do something a bit easier. I'm going to place a point on here. We've got the auto constraints on. So if we come over and look down, we've got the auto constraints, so we can connect up to this point and this point. So those are point on line constraints, and what we'll do is make all these points in line with each other, like so. And now I can take a measurement across here using the measure tool, and we click on reference, and it's 13.97. So we know the length of these needs to be 13.97. There we go. So we've got our rails all ready to go. Let's close out, and we can see our sketch is sitting there. And we can hide these wires and the ones underneath. So we've got the sketch here. Next, let's deal with our profiles. We've basically got a slot and a circle. So these are pretty easy to do. We can go through the same process. So we can click on this circle here. We don't have to upgrade it or anything. We just come into the modifications and draft to sketch, and we get a circle like so. And if we split that, because we only want half a profile, split it in half and delete the bottom, set some diameter or some radius on here first. So set the radius, okay, that, and now I can make sure that all these points are in line. So taking all those three, place them in line, and we can move that. And what I want to do is, when I place this on here, I want this point to connect to here. So I'm going to take this point and connect it to the center point with a coincident constraint. So that's all set. Let's close that. So now we've got the sketch for the rails and the sketch for the profile. I notice the rails need to go a bit further. Let's just do this one as well. So I'm going to take these, go along here, modifications, upgrade them to a wire. So we've got a single wire there, and then we'll come into modifications and draft a sketch. And we'll need to come in, add some constraints. Well, the first thing we need to do is split this. So let's add a vertex in there with a split and delete these. Need to make sure that these two have a radius 2.59, take the defaults, and a length of 8.79. Let's make sure that these two are in line, the same as these two. And when we move this, well, we need some extra constraints. So these two actually need to be tangent. So we add some tangency, okay, and tangency across those two as well. And now we should be able to move this. That's good. We'll take this point and place it on the center point. Quincy constraint. So that's all set there. So that's closed. So now we've got, let's hide this wire. Don't need that anymore. We have our rails, our profile, which is a circle profile, and our slot profile. And we can save this as Spitfire exhaust. So those are done. Let's just double check our rails. And you can see that these are some distance away from the top here. So I want to extend these out. I've got a line here and a line going up to here. These are actually in line, these two. Let's place those in line. And I'm just going to add another line going up. I'm just going to leave these where they are. I'll place a line going up, I think to about here. And this one, follow the natural curve of this, so going to about here. There we go. Keep these two in line. And 13.97, let's delete that and set the length here. Use a length 13.97. Let's pull those in, but we just want to be careful of how this curves up and how our transition is between those. So I'm just looking and thinking something like that. This affects our surface, so if we have tangency across here, we get a better surface. So I'm thinking something like this. Now it's out on the picture, but it'd be much better for our surface once it comes to doing this. Something like that. And let's take this vertical constraint off as well. And move this slightly. So we get a smooth line. That's what we're looking for. These smooth lines going across. I'm going to bring in some geometry. So let's bring in this line here and take this point and place it on that line with a point on object constraint. We've got a B-spline that's coming, so we can't do that. So okay, but what we can do is take this point, rather than taking a line, take this point and put those in line with each other. That pulls this up. We can constrain this down if we wanted to, but the main one we want is the length between here to be equal to the length going across this one, and the length across here going to be the same as this one. Because when we close, now we're going to come in and hide all these shapes. So all these all the way up to the top. Shift click them all, press the space bar. And we've got this one as well, which is a shape. Let's hide that. Don't want any of those. So we've got this one, slot profile, circle profile, and the two lines. So these two rails. Let's place this somewhere. So we can do some placement on here. And position along the X. And also along the Y. Let's bring this down. This means that our point of rotation will be in the middle, and it's much easier to deal with. So now we've got that, we need to place these shapes onto these points. To do that, I'm going to use attachment. So click the circle profile, which is a sketch, come into the map mode and click on that. Where it's saying selecting, this is our first reference. So make sure this is saying selected. It hasn't got anything in there, no reference selected. We're going to come in and select the vertex on this line. This one here. This moves this translate origin. The next reference has come available and saying selecting, and select this point. Now we need to figure out which way this is going to sit. So we've got a number of options down here. So the O is the origin, and then this is reference 1, and then the NXY is reference 2. We haven't got reference 3, so it's just these two. So we can pick which one we want. So OX will place us this way, and then we just need some rotation. So around X, we've got rotate around X, rotate around Y, rotate around Z. So we're looking to rotate around this way, which should be the X. So we're looking at a 90 degrees of rotation. And this is the reason why we put the origin here, so we can rotate that correctly. That's all good. Okay, that. Now select the other sketch and do the same. So come in here. The origin is at the point of origin here, so we select the vertex. That's gone translate origin. It's actually placed in the right place. If it wasn't in the right place, then we use the selecting and select the other point and use the rotation, which we do need to do. So rotate around X, not the X direction. Let's come down and look around the X. 90 degrees. That hasn't actually done anything because we've still got translate origin. So what I need to do is get that vertex that's in here for the second selection. So that vertex. So sketch vertex 8. And now we can use the ONX, etc. So we want OXY. We've still got the 90 degrees of rotation in there. And we've got that all set up for our sweep. Okay, that. Now for the sweep, we're going to use the Curves Workbench. This is on an add-on. So Curves Workbench here, we can get to Tools Add-on Manager and find it in there. Now we're in the Curves Workbench. I need to join all of these lines up as a single line because we're going to use it as a rail. There are tools for that, and that's this tool here, the Join Curves. It requires us to control select the edges that we want to join up as one single curve. Like so. And then use the join curves. So that's joined that curve through there. Now if I press the spacebar on the sketch, you can see how that's laid across there. Let's do the same on the other side. Control select all of the edges. Again, use the join curve or curves. Come down to join curve. Now we can get rid of this rails sketch. We have two sketches here, which this has got one single edge. We need a single edge on this side, so I'm going to control select all those edges and again use the join curve. And that slot profile, we can press the spacebar on. Now we create a number of single edges. We can create the surface that goes between them. We're going to be using one of two workflows. We're either going to use a sweep onto rails or a Gordon surface. The Gordon surface workflow is quite simple. We take all the curves that we want to join because they're touching. It creates a network of curves. And we use the Gordon surface from the toolbar or the surfaces Gordon surface. And we'll create this surface going across here. So we've got this surface now. We can add more curves in here if we so desire. To add thickness to this, we come onto the part and we click on it and use the 3D offset tool. And sometimes this will work and other times it won't. So you can see this hasn't worked. If we get problems with that workflow, then we can try a different workflow. Let's delete that Gordon surface and use a different workflow. So I'm going to use the Curves Workbench with a sweep along two rails. So that's this tool here, sweep two rails. For that, I actually need to start in the part workbench, and I need to make a surface across these two curves or rails. Come over to the Curves Workbench, and then take that surface, these two arcs, and use the sweep to rails. Creates a point cloud. From that point cloud, we can come over to this icon here to approximate the points to NURBS, curve or surface. So we need sweep to rail selected and use that icon. We now got our surface, but we've got some cleaning up to do. So look at the approximate curve and look at the degree max and set this down to say 3, the lowest. And we get our surface in there. It's worth looking around to make sure that we haven't got any flaring around the edges. If we do have any flaring, we can change the number of rail instances across here, which will come into the approximate curve. Click on the sweep to rails and you've got profile samples and rail samples. So we can up this if we need to modify that. Now we've got a sweep on 2 rails. Let's come over to the part workbench and see if we can apply a 3D offset to it. Using the 3D offset. And now we have the offset. You can see we've got some problems around here, and that's where we can change the approximation curve. Come into here, we can get to the sweep to rails, which is grayed out at the moment, and we can change the rail samples. So if we have a look, we may be able to see some deformation along there. It looks like it's quite hard to see. Let's increase these rail samples to 30. Let's apply the 3D offset. And there we go. So that's solved that. If we come around to the other side, we can see we're all clear on each side. But we don't know how far to actually offset this by. At the moment we've got 1mm. Let's fill the offset. And let's find out how much to offset this. Let's hit OK. For that, I'm going to go back to the shapes we imported from the import file. So all these shapes here, which we made invisible, I'm just going to highlight them, press the space bar. Therefore, I can get back to this here. So we can take a measurement across both these profiles to figure out the width of this. So let's come in and get ourselves positioned. I'm going to go over to the sketcher. And I'm just going to use a new sketch along the XY plane, and we'll bring in both the profiles, both the circles, and we'll add a point. Got the auto constraints on, so when I hover over this we can add points, and we use these 2 points to figure out the distance between these two. We can take one diameter away from the other. This is one other way to do it. So we can take all those points, place them in a line, and therefore I can take these 2 points, add them to selection, and place a distance in here. And we get 0.35mm. We can't OK that, but what we can do, you can add that as a reference constraint. So click the reference, OK, and you can see that's been added. Let's close that and add the 0.34 to this width. So the offset, we can use the value in here, 0.34. Bring this around, and when we click, you'll notice this will shrink back down. And we've got the option to go the opposite direction as well. So if I put minus 0.34, this will actually go inwards. So we've gone inwards there. Inside the offset, you'll still have the approximation curve, and you can see that running around the outside. So we need to click on it and press the spacebar just to hide it. So we've created our first piece. This obviously needs mirroring. So to do that, we just come over to the part workbench, click on the part, and then use the mirror tool or part, come down to mirroring, and we're looking to flip this over a plane. So if we look at this handler down here, we can see we want to flip it around this plane here. So if we place a plane along here, this is the XY plane. So let's hit OK on the XY plane. And that's created a successful mirror over the other side. And we can join those together. To join these two parts, all we need to do is take the offset. So we're looking at the mirror. So if this mirror was collapsed, we come in, we take the offset from within, and then control click the mirror offset, those two apart, and then we come down to the Boolean tools and union both of those together. Once those are together, then we can start to work on the other shapes within here. Now, if we look at them, they're basically a cut-off shape that goes around here. And you can see it here as well. So we take a look at this one, you can see what's going on here. And this is the problem that I've got with this, is I'm not sure of the thickness of this one, and the profiles that we've used here, the length here, we've used that for this, but we don't have the length going across here. So it's maybe a case of, rather than using the outer profile, we actually use the inner profile for this top and made this smaller. But we're going to go ahead with this one and model this. So we can see we've got this shape here, which is basically a slot with an extruded length, and the same for this part as well. For that, I'm going to create a new sketch. Looking down from the top, let's bring this around to the right way. New sketch, XY plane, and hit OK. So looking to create basically this shape here. Let's see if this differs in size to this one. So I'm going to pull in some edge geometry and check the radius of both objects. Using the radius and the radius for this one as well. So we've got 2.5 and 2.5, so these are both the same. Now we do have an outer radius here, but this looks like a fillet between those two. So if we look, we can see we've got this fillet here. So what I'm going to do is take this shape again. Let's come over to the model and hide the fusion by pressing the spacebar. We're basically looking for slot geometry once again. And we don't have to place one of these points upon here, we're just going to keep it centered. So take these 2 points and this center point. Symmetry constraint, and make these two equal. And pull in the length and make these two equal. So we've got that constrained down. I'm now going to use this radius. Let's bring in that one. And that's come in as a B-spline, so I can't actually use that. But what I can do is find out the distance, bring in those two, and place a point on here, like so, and keep these two in line. Horizontal constraint. I can check the length between these two with a length constraint. We've got 51 on there, and let's use a reference. So 0.51. So I now know that my second slot and make these 2 points coincident. We know the distance between these two. Place a height in there of 0.51. And we just need to constrain the center points with a coincident constraint. So we've got that in there. Task, hit close. And now we need to figure out how far we need to extrude this. So this will be a length between here. So this line that runs along here, the top of this part, let's bring that in. And we need to bring in this top part here. Use the import geometry, pull in that line, and we'll pull in the top part here. There is a vertex sitting here, but I don't think it's the highest point. So let's bring that in. Matter of fact, that is the highest point. And then we can make a measurement between these two, placing in a height. Gives us some reference. 5.39, 5.4. Let's close that. And this sketch, come over to the part and extrude that by 5.4 millimeters. So we've got that there. Next, I want to actually create a cut between these. So I'm going to create some geometry across here. That takes this line and use that to cut away that shape. Again, I'm going to come over to the draft workbench. So we need to take that curve and move it into position. Personally, I will sketch this onto this face. We can move this, but I would prefer to use a sketch over the sketcher and place it on this face because we need some tangency against these edges for this to work. So select that face, new sketch, it will be placed flat face on there, and we can use this for reference. Bring in some geometry, so I'm going to bring in the top and the side so we can place our curve in line with this. And I'm going to use an endpoint and rim point arc, and first we're going to do the curve in the center and come up, place this symmetrical to the center line using the symmetry constraint, and now we want curves going this way, so curve going like this and one this way, so they're going to be the same, and place these 2 points in line and these 2 points in line. So we've got that there. We can adjust the curvature to get the shape that we need. We also need tangency across here using the tangent, and also the tangent on the other side as well. And pull these out. We may need to add additional curves to these. We need to make these two equal. So we can adjust these. So let's place this up here. And we want the top touching the top. So let's bring in this line here and take this curve and this line, make the tangent. Look at the front, we can see how that's in line. Use the polyline, and we're going to create, you see how we've gone up and this has gone off to the side. If we press the M key, it places it in different modes. So this is what's happening here. So we're going to come up this way, come across, and then come down and connect up. So we've got those there. So this geometry is going to be extruded and removed from this. Let's hit close. Now I've got that there. Back to the part workbench. Click on the sketch, hit extrude. And as long as it covers the object, I'm going to go minus 10 millimeters because it's going to go this way, I believe. Hit OK, there we go. long as it's extruded and extruded over that shape, it doesn't matter if it comes out at the end. So let's take the extrude, control click the other extrude, part, boolean, and cut. So we get our shape. Bring back the fusion. So we're starting to get the individual shapes in here. If we want to put these together, I wouldn't come in and start trying to rotate this to put it on the end. What I would do is actually take a clone of this, or even use the link. So create link, hide that cut, and rotate this link, transform, and we can rotate this around wherever we see fit. So let's rotate it this way and move it into position. And you can be more accurate with the placement, but I'm just eyeballing it into position, like so. And hit OK. So there's some more work to do with this object, such as creating the top circular profile and extruding and shaping that, but that's the same as the slot part. Also, there's a base to that slot part, but that's quite easy to do. So I think that's enough to get you started and guide you through that process. And I hope that was useful, and I hope to see you again soon.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a Ko-Fi site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.